Hello and welcome to the Citizen Compass newsroom. Today's news: Massacre at the Nix Gateway, MIE expedition ambushed. Expedition launches, everything as usual. On November 30th, 2955, all participants for the Hemeris Rising operation, directed by the Office of Naval Intelligence under Director Maxon, arrived at Port Tressler. The plan for the operation was to both explore the Nix system and the two currently open gateways leading to it from Stanton and Pyro, but more importantly, to re-establish the intelligence connection with the People's Alliance on Lev Ski. It was a much-anticipated operation, both for its importance to local intelligence operatives and for the deeper exploration of the beautiful glacier rings of Nix. No major threats were expected as the fleet assembled and prepared to depart, though standard security precautions were, of course, taken. The fleet was composed of two Carrack-class expedition vessels, the USCS Estrellas, captained by Director Maxon, and the USCS Janeway, captained by Captain D. Can. The Estrellas had previously suffered several technical difficulties on its last major mission, but had since undergone a full refit. Both ships were fully crewed and even carried squadrons of snub fighters ready for anything. Accompanying both Carracks were two escorts, the USCS Agamemnon, a Star Lancer TSE-class vessel captained by Minister Quintero, and the USCS Atlas, a Paladin-class vessel captained by Captain Ernst, Ito the Salty Cat. Both were well-armed and well-crewed. Before the fleet could depart, however, a moment of panic erupted as a Perseus-class vessel approached Port Tressler and was flagged by local security as hostile. While the ship fired upon a docked Polaris-class vessel, it ignored the USC fleet, and without further delay the order was given to proceed to the Nix Gateway. The ambush at Nix Gateway. The fleet departed one by one toward the Nix Gateway. As each ship arrived, everything appeared normal. Local scans were conducted, revealing nothing unusual. There were naturally numerous ships in the area, some moving, some idle, as is typical of a busy gateway. No hostile contacts were detected, and so the fleet arranged itself to approach the gateway in an orderly fashion, preparing to jump one after another to avoid accidents on the far side. Everything was underway. The two Carracks flew first toward the jump gate, followed by the two escorts. And then, without warning, laser fire struck the shields. The command channels were instantly filled with confusion as all ships scrambled to understand what was happening. The first vessel to be heavily targeted was the USCS Atlas, which was pummeled by heavy fire from behind, its shields shredded in seconds. Unable to identify the attacker, the Atlas attempted to turn and escape. But as it completed half the turn, its assailant appeared, an Idris P frigate. Too late. At that moment, the Idris fired its large laser cannon, instantly vaporizing the Atlas and killing everyone aboard. The attackers then turned their weapons on the two Carracks. Being larger vessels, they held out slightly longer than the Paladin, but were soon overwhelmed by the immense firepower. Unlike the Atlas, both Carracks were disabled rather than destroyed, leaving most crew alive until boarding parties stormed each ship and killed everyone aboard. Lastly, the USCS Agamemnon fought valiantly, holding out far longer than expected, but ultimately she too was destroyed with all hands. While this account may seem lengthy, the truth is that the entire battle lasted only minutes, with the boarding actions taking only a few more. It was a total and complete massacre. There is no softer way to describe it. The entire USC expeditionary fleet was ambushed and annihilated in moments. All ships lost, along with all cargo vehicles and equipment. Regrouping for revenge. Stunned, that is the only word that fits. All ships lost, all hands killed within minutes. Thankfully, the regeneration systems functioned properly, and no permanent fatalities were recorded. But everyone was scattered across Stanton, Nix, and even Pyro. The captains and commanders quickly re-established contact and discussed the next steps. It was chaotic at first, but soon new groups of survivors formed based on proximity and began preparing ships for a return to Nix. Revenge was in motion. It was a mammoth task, gathering so many scattered people onto several larger vessels so quickly. Some even had to travel from Nix to Pyro, and then back to Stanton to avoid the attackers guarding the Nix Gateway. In the end, everything was accomplished, and despite some delays from technical issues, a substantial fleet of Idris frigates was assembled and set out for a counterattack. This time the fighting lasted far longer. However, with little intelligence about the enemy force, the battle soon turned grim. What was initially believed to be a single hostile Idris turned into two, then another, and a never-ending swarm of support fighters harassing every ship. One enemy, Idris, was successfully driven away from the jump gate, only to turn back and destroy its pursuers. Despite everyone fighting bravely, the counterattack ultimately failed. All ships were either destroyed, disabled, or boarded. It wasn't due to a lack of trying or the ships and crews being bad. The odds were simply against us, as the attacking forces were simply too overwhelming. It was quickly decided that any further attempts would likely be futile. All survivors were ordered to stand down and return home. New expeditions would be scheduled later once access to the gateway was clear again, and staff could evaluate the situation as well as future mission protocols. Aftermath analysis. So what went wrong? That was the burning question on everyone's mind that evening. The expedition was certainly not understaffed or defenseless. Potential threats had been considered, protocols were in place, yet the ambush still succeeded, and the entire fleet was obliterated. One might argue that the protocols were perhaps applied a little too loosely, and that more thorough scouting could have been done. But realistically, no one expected a large pirate fleet containing multiple Idris-class frigates to be lying in wait. These were not random pirates, but a highly organized force. Intelligence later identified them as the Blight Vale Legion. The expedition was well organized and well prepared, but no one could have predicted the scale or precision of the ambush. As for the counterattack, most staff praised the rapid regrouping and the impressive rebuild of the fleet, but clearly recognized that coordination during the battle itself was lacking, or simply non-existent. There is much to be learned. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Unlikely. It seems the expeditionary fleet may have just been very unlucky to be the first victim of these pirates who were still flying undetected and unflagged as a hostile force to be even recognized as a threat. Some may perhaps say that we have a spy in our midst, or there may have been some intelligence leaks. But there is no evidence to support that, and while some pirate organizations do seek out their targets through intelligence operations, we do not believe that that was the case this time. We were simply unlucky. A tragic day for the USC. The massacre at the Nix Gateway may enter USC history as one of its most devastating ambushes. An entire expeditionary fleet destroyed, and even the counterattack crushed. To think this tragedy occurred only days before Three Worlds Day, perhaps the most solemn USC holiday commemorating the loss of the Oracle system, our former home, violently taken by the Vanduul. Perhaps, as USC citizens light their 3 candles on December 4th, some may light a 4th in memory of those brave souls who fell in the expeditionary fleet at the Nix Gateway. This event was a wake-up call for USC captains, directors, and fleet planners. Something must be done to make the USC and its members safer, especially as attacks continue to rise. Even today, we receive new reports of large pirate groups operating near gateways or along direct transit routes, intercepting and attacking travelers. These are dangerous times, and the USC must be prepared, updating protocols, refining practices, and teaching citizens how to respond and defend themselves. But amid this tragedy, one bright truth remains. Everyone who fought that day stood their ground without fear. They fought bravely. They fought with conviction. And they will be remembered. This was the news. Thank you for listening.